Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute as we let people roll in. Welcome, everyone. Oh, it's fun to see the names start popping up in our little webinar. Your Zoom universe. Thank you for being here. All right. I think people are on. Let me just make sure my audio is working. Yep. Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Reynolds, and I'm the Executive Director at Joe Good Performance Group. And of course, I'm not sure if you see this person. Am I doing it the right way? I don't know. Joe with Joe Good Performance Group. Welcome to Queer Realities, a performance event that is part of GUSH, a new festival platform at the Annex, which is now re-envisioned for Zoom. So thank you for joining us for our very first GUSH. I'll be hosting this event tonight, which really just means that I'm going to be handling the technology part of the virtual platform. I'll be VJing the videos and sharing my screen so that Joe and the company can share what they've created. So if you have any questions as we go through this evening or need any technical support, you can use the chat feature to let me know, and I'll try to help as quickly as I can. We are going to be sharing video tonight, and we know that sometimes people's internet can vary and video can sometimes get a little tricky. So in light of that, after tonight's event, we'll be sharing a YouTube playlist with you all so that you can rewatch and enjoy, but hopefully everyone's internet will stick with us throughout the event. All of GUSH, which started on Tuesday and continues through Sunday, is being offered by donation on a sliding scale. If you haven't done so yet, I hope you'll consider if you have the capacity to donate to support this festival. I'm going to paste a link to that in the chat. And GUSH is a festival that will continue through, there we go. We'll continue through Sunday, the 31st, with another 5 events, I think. And you can find those at our website, and that link is in the chat as well. I'm going to hand it off to Joe in just a moment, who will speak briefly about the work, and then we'll share about 20 minutes of video. And after that, we'll welcome the performers on for a brief Q&A that I'll help moderate, and I'll share more about how that'll work on Zoom when we get there. So without further ado, Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Michelle. I just wanted to start by saying that GUSH is a platform for Bay Area artists to show their work and to have conversations about their work. I particularly wanted to find artists whose work I was familiar with, who when I saw it brought me a little spark of joy. I'm borrowing that from Marie Kondo and the Tidying Up on Netflix. You have to watch it if you haven't, but she holds the t-shirt in her hand and she goes, "Does it give me a spark of joy?" And I think I feel that more about t-shirts than I do about artworks sometimes. And so it was really a pleasure to find companies that do bring me that kind of joy, and to share my audience with them, and to share this platform with them, and to have discussions about their work. Their work is very different from mine. Gerald Cassell Dance and Naka and Joe Good Performance Group have very little in common, actually. They're 3 very different kinds of work. And it's really been interesting to get to know each other a little better, and to and to peek into that other person's process. So that's kind of what GUSH is about. One of the things that we did that I thought was very interesting is we started off by writing a letter to our own aesthetic, which sounds very highbrow, but basically to make yourself put down on paper what it is that you're up to as an artist, what persists for you, what's consistently in your work. And one of the things that I came up with, I'm going to quote myself here, was I've always been interested in making queer lives and queer sensibilities visible, honoring them basically by making them a part of the conversation. So for tonight's little showing, which I've entitled Queer Realities, I went back to some old monologues and one dialogue from other works of the past. And I particularly chose things that I thought somehow touched on this queer sensibility and making it visible. Trying to reimagine these works in the Zoom format was incredibly painful, and I wasn't at all good at it. It was a humbling experience. Zoom proved to be glitchy and imperfect and kind of an art maker's nightmare, especially someone as atechnical as I am. But I think there was a lesson in there too, that in this imperfect time, in these awkward circumstances that we find ourselves in, we are reminded yet in one more way that we are fallible and fragile and human. And that's kind of what I wanted to say about the queer reality. So we don't have control over this. We don't know that any of it's going to work, but we're really hopeful. I think there are 4 little things that I will introduce. The first one is from Traveling Light, a piece that we made during the last recession at the Old Mint in San Francisco. And I think originally this monologue was about time, was about how we live in our aloneness or in our loneliness, and how time passes in that state. It occurred to me that, if we think about how a queer or trans person lives under the threat of not being safe in public, maybe, not being safe in their family, not being able to fully express who they are in every situation. Time has even a different meaning. That's not specifically what the monologue is about, but I think it was one of the reasons why I wanted to look at it again. So I think we're ready to go look at that first one.
During this slow period, I've learned to be quiet. The kind of quiet you find in between breaths. The part that isn't in or out. The kind of quiet you are when you sleep. not talking, only dreaming. When I am this quiet, I can get some relief from being myself. I can get momentarily unstuck from that idea of who I am. I'm not who I am, anyway. And it's a pleasure in this careful stillness to not be thinking of myself. I want to get by unnoticed. I want to reside here in this empty room, unnoticed.
That was Patricia West with the gang. Next up is Molly Katzman, and a monologue from a couple of years ago from a piece called Nobody Lives Here Now. I wanted to talk about the queer body and how the body is our first territory and yet can be an unfamiliar territory at times, even a dangerous one perhaps, to the person living inside of it. And maybe in this monologue too, you begin to see a glimmering of hope about escaping the rigid gender boundaries that we all live within to some degree. Here we go.
Are you tired of hearing stories about the man? The little man who transformed himself into a bigger man? A powerful, magic, manly man. Are you tired of that? Yeah, me too. Well, here's another kind of story about a good girl who wanted to step out of the good girl box. That was me. Am I scared of what I am? Am I scared of this androgyny? Not much. Do I look scared? But the labels. I don't wear the labels well. Butch. Femme. Dancer. Good girl. Dyke. Transitioning. Lesbian. Is it a boy? Is it a man? It's more complicated than that, isn't it? Yes, it's definitely more complicated than that. Anyway, It will all disappear eventually. Everything disappears. Everything. Everything. There used to be a body here that I understood. And now, nobody seems to live here anymore. I am the liminal space. I am not a thing of magic. I am here, just as I am. I am the product of some evolution that cannot be stopped. Will you touch me? Or will you despise me? Will you touch me? Will we touch each other?
The amazing Molly Katzman. Next is a dialogue, sort of, about friendship and the family of choice. It's from a piece called Hush, which we made based on interviews with LGBTQ youth. And we asked them how they saw their place in the world, what they valued, what maybe scared them about living queer in America. Many of them spoke about the connection to a close person or confidant as the saving grace in their lives. So this is Melesio Estrella and Damar Ganley, and we are going to, we'll go straight from that. I won't introduce the final one because it's my face again, which is a monologue from When We Fall Apart, which is pretty self-explanatory.
I've never had a friend like you. A friend that doesn't judge me or ask me to be something I'm not. I feel like I can pour my queer self into you, and you can handle it.
I can handle it. Pour your queer self all over me.
I am so glad we have this little corner of the world. Our corner. So private. So real.
It is real. And it's necessary. a way to survive.
How do I survive when I'm alone in this room without you here to talk to me?
How about we make a pact that we will shield each other from the world?
That sounds good.
I will be there for you as a kind of filter, a protective layer. I will deflect the harsh arrows that come your way, and you will do the same for me.
You're a good friend. I think you have stumbled onto a life-altering plan. I will be there for you, and when you're feeling tender, I will be like a fierce mother lioness to fend off all danger.
I feel so much better now. I feel like I can tell you what happened, and then I will be able to breathe. What was roaring inside of me will be hushed. I will not be a walking scream anymore. Edvard Munch's famous painting will no longer be etched on my insides.
That's good. We're like two flowers, and we need to grow each other.
How can I water you?
Don't let me stand outside and just watch the parade. Dance me into the crowd.
That feels right. No matter how many secrets, no matter how fragile we might be, no matter the nicks and the bruises, we will march in the parade.
I never had a friend like you. You are the very best, you know.
I know.
So I can't hide behind these stories, even though it thrills me to live in the skin of these beautiful, fragile people. But I have stories of my own, of the people I have known and loved, Felix and Finn and Fernando, all F words, of Martha and B. Crow, who taught me my gentle side, of Gregorio, who danced like a devil and used to say, "Let's get our towels and go to the bitch." Of the Vietnam vet, Richard, who sat on my bed in my studio apartment on 17th Street and showed me his gun and asked me if I wanted to go there with him. And I thought, maybe. Of Michael and Bill Bell and Alexander, my roommates on the Upper West Side, Michael the moneymaker, and Billy and Alex the cater waiters, all of them dead now. Of the 90s and AIDS, and having lived through that decade, and all of the stronger and more beautiful men who didn't get to live. Of my sissy boy childhood, of the terror and the self-loathing, of the revulsion I felt for pinky rings and peroxided hair, the codes that signaled in the community theater that you were never going to get a bigger part, of growing up in the South and knowing that I had to get out of there or I would definitely die. Of all the impossible kindness of so many gentle heroes who arose in times of madness and held my hand and sang to me and kept me, for whatever reason, alive. Where are they? Those who sang, "And why am I the last man standing? Isn't it my time to sing for them?" Moving well through life, moving well through life, moving, moving, moving well through life, moving well through life, moving, moving.
Thank you. I'm going to invite the performers on. So bear with me for just a moment while I do that. And if I can do two things at once, let me try. I will share that we are opening up for questions. And the way that you can do that is two different ways, actually. Where's Malesio? There's Malesio. One is to write in the Q&A, and you can go down to, or in the chat, both are available at the bottom, or you can do a fancy little thing where you can raise your hand and I can call on you by unmuting your audio and you can ask with your voice and we can hear you. So as you think about any questions or comments you might have for Joe or the performers, I'll just get everyone back, all the performers back up here. Thanks for your patience. There we go. Might take them a moment. And guys, feel free to show your videos and your audio too.
Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Hi. I think I got, let's see, let me see here.
So fun to see them all together and also just to visit everyone's living room one more time. Like, oh, those are some nice living rooms. I like them. There's Molly.
That's right. Well, hi everyone. Do you want to go around and say where you are right now?
I'll start. I am Joe Good, and I'm in Berkeley, California.
Hey, I'm Malesio. and I'm in East Oakland right now.
I'm Patricia West, and I'm in Oakland right now.
I'm Molly. I'm in Santa Cruz.
I'm Damara. I'm in Santa Cruz as well.
Wonderful.
And at the bottom, that's a friend of mine, actually. It's another Molly. I don't know how she got on here. You guys see that?
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome, Molly.
That's funny. I think I did that. Too many Mollys in the world. Too many Michelles. We all have the same names here on Zoom.
Liz. Hi, Liz.
Great. Well, I'll get started with a question, and then we'll dive into other folks' questions. If you're watching on Facebook on the live stream, you can also chat a comment there, and I'll try to grab as many as I can. I wonder, Joe and everyone, since all of you have been with the company now for quite some time, I wonder if how queerness shows up in the work has changed over time, or how your ideas of queerness have evolved as the years have gone by.
Do you want me to start? I think that I have a more expansive maybe view. I think when I first made something like 29 Effeminate Gestures, I really felt like I wanted to show the urgency of not having been seen, and the urgent need to be seen in my fullness. And maybe that's become less urgent in a certain way. I'm more interested in listening and seeing what other people bring and what that means for them. And yeah, does anybody else want to talk about that?
I will talk a little bit. I'll tell the story of when Joe interviewed me to be in the company. I was a long time ago. I think I was 23 years old or something, and very shy. I was very quiet. And that quietness, I think, was cultivated around protecting my queerness, trying to dampen it as to not cause a stir. That's, in my family, in my life growing up. Anyway, I go into Joe's office at UC Berkeley, and I'm like, Joe Good. And then he's so calm and so warm. And I remember one of the first things he told me that's important to him during this interview is to make overtly queer work and to tour it in places that don't have that. And that just kind of blew my young mind. And then the first show that I had to do was called Hometown. And I had this monologue, and he kept pushing me to be more feminine, to let that feminine side of myself come out. And it was really, really difficult. And I don't know how successful I was, but I do know that there was a huge success, sort of a emotional, personal growth success for young me in having to do that, in uncovering my own queerness through the work. And that's been this huge gift, Joe. Huge gift over the last decades working with you to feel supported and encouraged and empowered in that way.
Thank you.
I'll chime in with, there's really a lot of wonderful questions here. So I'm gonna get into audience questions. Garth has a question, and there are a couple actually about how you approached working together on Zoom from your homes. For the performers, can you talk about your relationship to the lens and the frame in performing in this capacity?
I I can maybe talk a little bit about that. It's yeah, I think one question I asked while we were making this is where do we put our focus? Especially me, since I was talking, where do I look right at the camera? You know, I really wanted to look at the other dancers. I really wanted to look at my friends here and watch them. It was giving me sort of information and energy to kind of do the next thing and to stay in the moment when I was watching them, really. And you know, Joe was like, well, whatever, you can you can look here, you can look there. So I feel like there is this I think it's sort of everything's in one scope. It kind of tunnel visions in one space, something that I'm used to really looking out and seeing people, or just looking out around the room and sort of relating with one another. So it's just something very different, I think. And eventually I just sort of ignored it. I think there were times when maybe I looked at it, maybe I didn't, but I actually rather look at, you know, who I was dancing with and who I was moving with.
I see some interesting questions over there in the chat.
Yeah, and we actually, Liz has her hand raised over in the audience. So Liz, I'm gonna allow you to unmute yourself if you wanna ask your question.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Oh my goodness, this is so wonderful. I feel like you all just gave us a glimpse of what we're longing for in this time. Like, you all feel very revealed and vulnerable in your little squares, and watching you each go through these cathartic moments, I feel like is part of what I myself am kind of longing for. I feel a little bit tamped down, and I think the fear is really part of that, and kind of the isolation and where do I go and how can I go there and all that. But I'm wondering about your physicality and your bodies and how you're taking care of that. How are you taking care of all that?
Damara or Molly, do you want to chime in?
Are you talking about, like, are we dancing and moving our bodies, or do you mean inside of the performance?
Well, I think both. I think how are you keeping that all alive, but also just how are you feeding yourself? I think the lack of physical touch, the lack of faces, you know, from the nose down, the lack of just being able to hug someone or touch someone is so hard for me, and I'm just wondering how you're feeling about all that.
I mean, it's really hard for me too, Liz. I feel the scarcity around that for sure. I mean, it was great to share this creative space with all of these people that I found myself trying to reach for that through the screen because there is this loss of that. And, you know, I try and get my partner to roll around the floor with me and just put her weight on me. You know, like I'll try and do stuff like that and just, you know, feel my physicality and touch myself, you know, self-care touch. But it's hard. I feel the challenge of that too.
I think it was very challenging in the making to not be in the same room. It was so hard because I wanted to, I mean, of course, touch and hug everybody, and because I haven't seen them, but even more than that, just to physically communicate with each other was hard to do in the little Zoom box, and we usually have a very clear shorthand that we can communicate with each other very quickly when we're embodied and together, but it was harder, much harder.
I would just add to that as well. It was hard, but it was also really nourishing just to be in a Zoom room with these people rehearsing, through these challenges. But as you know, Liz, I think, there's most of the time such a sweetness in our rehearsals that's actually nourishing to us as people, through collaboration, through art making, and just through being together. And I felt that. I felt warmer leaving these Zoom rehearsals. I felt nourished in that way, and because I love these people and I really enjoy the work.
Yeah, you kind of feel like the history of these people's touch on your body, the history of the weight of their body, how it was to move with them in the same space. Like that when we're in rehearsal together, even through Zoom, you can kind of reach into the history of it and feel that.
I think we feel that coming from all of you.
Yeah, I wanted to definitely speak to how it amplified for me how precious it is that I have the opportunity that to cultivate creative relationships over long periods of time in my life and with these people, and how those relationships are really sacred. Actually, I found that what Militia and everyone was saying, that when I would see their faces and see their energies and hear their voices, I could feel the relationship as the important part of what I needed to connect to. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm really grateful to have that opportunity to really cultivate and be responsible to these relationships of these amazing people. Yeah.
Thank you, Liz. There's another question here from David Herrera. For those dancers of you who identify as straight, how do you find queerness in yourself? Is there even such a thing? How do you approach, I guess maybe another question that comes from me is, how do you approach that relationship with the content, and how does that rub against your own identity?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's no hard space of where you are, in this. I know for myself at least. So it's not like I am or I am not, in a way. I think there are parts of myself that I guess also when Joe was talking about queerness, I was thinking about, I mean, it's not to generalize, but there's like a difference. There's a difference. And I think for me, tying in with really people and having to experience, walking through life with certain, I guess, labels maybe, or assumptions and about who they are and what they do and why. And I think that I definitely, I think, I don't know if this makes sense, but I identify with going through life with my own sort of differences, whatever they are, whatever makes me me on the outside, and the choices or the way I live, the lifestyle I have. And I think that can be something everybody can identify with, in a way of just sort of like being seen versus not being seen in many ways. So that's kind of what that's kind of how I take away from that. That's one of the ways, I think. I'm not sure if any of that made sense, but.
It did.
Okay. That definitely resonates around understanding that there's a fluidity to my experience and all of our experiences, but also that I have a responsibility to listen really deeply and make sure that I'm hearing the stories that are being shared and honoring those stories. So there's that part too for me.
Thank you. There are so many wonderful questions and comments here, so I don't think we'll be able to get through all of them, but I'm going to try for 2 more. Joe, this one is for you. It's from our friend John Sander. He says, I read a beautiful story the other day about Peggy Lee and the fact that a celebration of her 100th birthday was planned for around now. The story also mentioned Doris Day. Of course, this made me think of you and Liz and the Dust Bowl and Convenience Boy and your flaming baton solo to Fever. I have not seen this. Can you talk a little about how both of them inspired you?
Well, I think like every good gay boy, any diva inspires me. You know, any iconic femininity inspires me. Whether it's the cool to the touch Doris Day or the sensual kind of boozy Peggy Lee. I recognize the beauty. I also recognize the pain, and I'm drawn to it. And I think that element of camp has been present in my work for a long, long time, probably always will be. I do want to say, because John Sander knows this, that I caught myself on fire on stage with the fire baton. I was twirling a fire baton, and you know, my twirling skills are not that great. And I had a feathery dress on and I caught myself on fire. So to everyone's endless amusement, luckily I was not seriously injured. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think we'll have time for one more question. I'm going to call on another person who raised their hand so that we can hear a voice. That was so nice. Pavini, I'm going to click allow to talk. Let's see. If you want to ask your question, I believe you're here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Pavini.
Oh,
I don't know, it's so much of a question, but what I wanted to share was whatever is inside each of you that makes you go through the hardship of creating art in such a technologically challenging way. I just want you to know how much it matters. Because my partner and I, we, after 2 decades, made the decision to leave San Francisco, and we're both queer, we're both trans, and we moved to the deep south, and so we're here, and it's amazing. It made me cry. Just the connection of seeing art that represents who we are, and to know that you all went to, you know, hours and hours of rehearsal and struggling. It means a lot. I just wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Wow. Totally making us cry with that.
Yeah.
Totally making us cry. Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Yeah. Whew.
Well, I can't really think of a better way to wrap up than that. Thank you. Thank you for that, and for being here with us, and for being. So thank you. And to the performers, and to Joe, and to everyone who's been part of GUSH and part of the festival, for making it happen, even when we didn't quite know which way to proceed. A feeling that I'm sure all of us are very familiar with right now. So thank you so much. I'm gonna let's see here. I'll try to paste the links to the YouTube videos here in the chat before we go, if you want to go back and rewatch them. And you'll also get them in an email if you signed up on our website. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.